All right, today we're going to tackle a phrase that gets thrown around all the time but is rarely ever, really broken down. Research methodology. And look, this isn't just for academics in ivory towers. This is the secret framework that separates a really costly guess from a truly smart, evidence-backed decision. So let's dive in. So picture this. You're at a major crossroads. Maybe you're deciding whether to launch a new product, maybe jump into a new market, or completely change up your pricing. So what do? Do you trust your intuition, that gut feeling that's probably served you well before? Or do you lean on the cold, hard data? It's a classic dilemma, right? And the cost of getting it wrong can be absolutely huge.
Well, the good news is you really don't have to choose between the two. There's a way to combine sharp thinking with solid evidence. And that brings us to our first big question. What is research methodology anyway? The easiest way to think about it? It's your blueprint for finding better answers.
At its core, research methodology is your game plan. It's the systematic, scientific, and logical approach you take to get from point A to point B. It's less about the final result and way more about the process you follow to get there. It's all about making sure your path from question to answer is sound, it's solid, and it's repeatable. See, a good methodology forces you to answer three absolutely crucial questions. First, what methods are you actually going to use? Are we talking surveys, experiments, interviews? Second, why are those the right tools for this specific problem? And finally, how are you going to handle all the data you collect? It's all about being intentional.
And any strong methodology is going to have these 5 key features. It's systematic, meaning it follows clear steps. It's logical and empirical, so it's based on reason and actual facts, not just opinions. And here's the kicker. It has to be reliable and objective. That just means the results are accurate, they're consistent, and they're free from your own personal bias.
This whole thing, it's really a journey. It starts with a super clear problem, you do your homework, you form a hypothesis, and then you get into the nitty-gritty of designing your study and collecting data. But the real magic, where the raw numbers start to tell a story, that's step 7. The analysis, and that's exactly where we're headed next. Okay, so this brings us to the really fun part, the analyst's toolbox. Now that we have the blueprint, let's look at the tools themselves. This is the how behind the what, the specific methods that are going to bring your research framework to life. Because, let's be honest, a brilliant blueprint for our house is just a piece of paper if you don't have the hammers, the saws, and the measuring tapes to actually build the thing. The same is absolutely true for research.
And in the world of research, these tools are mathematical and statistical. They are the engines that transform that huge, messy pile of raw data into organized, meaningful conclusions that you can actually use to make a confident decision.
So let's take a quick tour of some of the most important tools in this toolbox. And don't worry, we're not going to break out the calculators and get bogged down in equations. Instead, we're just going to focus on what they do and why they actually matter for your business. First up, we've got descriptive statistics. Think of this as your business's health check. Tools like mean and median give you the vital signs, like what's the typical age of your customer. Others, like range, tell you how spread out things are. Are all your customers around 30, or do they range from 18 to 80? This is your very first step to just understanding what you've got. Okay, now this next one, this is where things get really powerful. It's called inferential statistics. You can't survey every single customer in the world, right? Of course not. So you survey a smaller group, a sample. These tools let you make a highly educated guess, an inference, about the entire population based on what you learned from that small sample. It's kind of like a superpower. Now, this is a big one that trips people up. Correlation versus regression. Let me break it down. Correlation simply tells you if two things move together. For instance, do sales go up when you spend more on ads? Regression takes it a giant step further. It tries to explain how one thing affects another. It lets you ask, hey, if I increase my ad spend by 10%, what sales increase can I actually predict? So one finds a link, the other tries to explain it. And of course, the toolbox is deep. You've got things like probability, which helps you put a number on risk and uncertainty. There's time series analysis, which lets you look at past data to forecast future sales trends. Linear programming is amazing for optimizing your resources, like finding the cheapest delivery routes. And index numbers help you track changes over time, like inflation. Each one is a specialized tool for a very specific job. But look, all this fancy math is completely useless if you can't get anyone to understand it, right? And that brings us to my favorite part, the tools that make your data speak loud and clear.
Take the humble bar chart. I mean, nothing is better for a simple, direct comparison. How did product A's sales stack up against product B and C last quarter? Boom! This visual gives you the answer in a split second. No confusion.
Or how about a pie or a donut chart? Anytime you need to show how the pie is sliced, like your market share percentages or the breakdown of your budget, this is your go-to. It instantly shows proportion and scale.
So when you think about it, these visual tools, bar charts, pie charts, scatter plots, all of them, they're not just pretty pictures. They are a critical part of the methodology. They are the bridge between your complex findings and the clear, simple story you need to tell to actually get something done.
All right, let's land this plane. We've talked about the framework and we've talked about the tools. So what's the big payoff? How do we get from all that raw data to a confident decision?
It really just boils down to this. The methodology is your map. It lays out the logical path from your question to your destination. The mathematical tools, they're the vehicle. They give you the power to actually travel that path and arrive at a real, evidence-based answer. You need both.
And at the end of the day, that's the whole point. The entire purpose of a strong research methodology, powered by the right analytical tools, is to make sure your conclusions are logical, reliable, and grounded in solid evidence. It's all about replacing "I think" with "I know, and here's why."
So I'll leave you with one final thought to chew on. Whether it's for your business, your career, or just a personal project, what's the next big decision you could make smarter, safer, and a whole lot more successful by using a better methodology? Thanks for tuning in.